Welcome to Coach Soul, the podcast where we explore therapeutic ways to the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Steve Hudgins. I'm a licensed professional counselor dedicated to helping you navigate life's challenges. In each uplifting episode, we'll discuss mental health, relationships, self-care, emotional well-being, and personal growth. Join me and with my co-host, Kenya Evelyn, a therapeutic life coach, where sometimes we'll even welcome special guests to our show that share their experience and expertise. So let's embark on this transformative path together and discover a healthier and happier you. All right, welcome back to Coach Soul. I am excited for 2025, and with me is Connie Portman. Connie, thank you for joining Coach Soul, because I believe that starting off 2025 is important. And a lot of people at this time start resolutions and things like that. And I just don't think resolutions help, because we set high expectations and goals for ourselves that are just not adequate. And so, Connie, tell our audience a little bit about you and what you do.
Yeah, great. I'm happy to be here. Thanks so much for that great introduction, Steve. So I started my career as a professional chef after growing up in Amish Country, Pennsylvania, where I was surrounded by beautiful farms, holistic vegetables, meats. All of that provided a background for my eating style for the rest of my life. So as a child, I started cooking. I then transitioned to the professional kitchen, where I learned all the techniques of cooking. Then I realized my body was not going to tolerate that profession long-term because it's very hard on the body. I started studying dietetics and holistic nutrition. I have my bachelor's in holistic nutrition, applied that to the science of cooking. So then I have both sides. You can teach somebody how to cook, but do it nutritionally and really break it down into layman's terms. Then I took one more step and became a certified health coach. My goal there is really to partner with people to establish goals that will create long-term health, but do it in a way that's manageable and achievable. You mentioned, New Year's resolutions. We all set them. Yes. Them way too high. We set ourselves up for failure, and it becomes this circle of, defeat, where we set this pattern of like, we're gonna, lose 10 pounds, and it never happens. And then we feel frustrated, and then we gain more back. So my goal is to really unpack that with the client and really set a goal that's achievable, so that then they can start to build that self-belief.
So it's interesting that you say that you grew up in Amish country. Evidently you are not Amish. So you grew up in the Amish country. Did the Amish teach you some of their ways, or you just observe? What was the Amish community like for you growing up?
Yeah, no, they didn't teach me directly. The Amish community is very private. But growing up, watching the way they lived, their circle of life, their rhythm of life, I should say, was really informative as a young child, and really eating clean, healthy food. That's, you walk down the street and you get these beautiful tomatoes and corn and meat and eggs and cheese. It just really imprinted on me the value of clean, healthy food, and really living in rhythm with the land.
Growing up, our food back in, the earlier years, we won't go too far back. I don't want to reveal our age here. But growing up, our food was a lot healthier. And it's funny because you can go on and watch MeTV and watch some of the old rerun shows that were back on during the day. Some of my favorites was like, Happy Days or The Love Boat, or whatever these kind of shows that were produced back then. Now I'm really telling my age, but they were healthy. And it seems like back then our food is a lot healthier. Do the Amish reuse their seeds, and do they grow healthy food compared to the genetically modified food that we have today?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know about the reusing of the seeds. I would imagine they do that because it's an heirloom plant. Like a lot of their tomatoes, for example, are heirloom tomatoes, which you can't buy in the grocery store. They only use natural fertilizers. They're out there by hand, tilling the fields, pulling the weeds, using mules to process or, go through the fields. So I think absolutely you can see the clear delineation of how healthy their produce is versus a big farm and how they've depleted the soil, they're using chemicals, and the impact on your body. So absolutely you can look, there's so much documentation on how our food has lost its nutrient value. And not only that, how we're eating so much more processed stuff that when we were growing up in the 60s and 70s, was not even part of the food production chain, right? The food industry has shifted dramatically over the last 35 years, primarily because of our time or our imposed limits on our time. So
here you are, you're learning from the farmers, you're noticing their food and things like that. And as a little girl, you're saying, hey, I want to be a chef. What was the inspiration behind wanting to be a chef?
Creatively, I always felt like that was my best creative outlet. Like I love to just get in the kitchen and express myself with food, but also to show my love and appreciation through food. And it just became a really natural thing for me just to go in and whip something up. And as I've gotten more practiced with it, it becomes more elaborate, and I just really enjoy it.
So here you are, you become this chef, and you said you were a private chef. Anything interesting or exciting about being a private chef? Like did you do movie stars, presidents? What did you do as a private chef?
Well, my most famous party that I attended was at Bruce Hornsby's house on a Christmas Eve many moons ago. But it was a lot of fun because it was an intimate party. We had about 25 people there at his home where he was playing the piano. And it was just a beautiful party because it was a holiday party. Everybody else, has been a celebrity in their own right. I really like the light bulb moment people have when you can connect them with how simple eating well is, because in the media, they will tell you the opposite. And it's the whole financial machine behind our food industry that drives that confusion. So that's where I just like to boil it down to the simplest terms and show people how to do it, either through teaching them or just creating the meals for them.
So did you go through culinary school?
I did. I went through culinary school when I was in high school. So it was a vocational program. Most of my learning was actually done on the job. After high school, I worked in 4- and 5-star resorts in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and Williamsburg, Virginia. And there's nothing like learning on the job, because I was learning from chefs that were internationally trained. And I learned a lot of amazing things.
So growing up and becoming a chef, you go through high school, you go to culinary school, I've been around food in college. I worked in the cafeteria, learning food prep, learning how, and those type of things are totally different. And so what makes a private chef different from a commercialized chef? You look at Gordon Ramsay, one of the famous chefs out there. I enjoy watching his shows and how what's the difference between that kind of a commercial chef creating and making elegant food compared to a private chef?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest point of difference is really you can personalize it as a private chef. You go in and find out what the family likes or dislikes, if there's any particular allergies or food intolerant situations. Like some people that I work with have allergies or intolerant reactions to soy or sugar or that sort of thing, or they're vegetarian, they want to have special meals. So really it's that individualization of the meals and working with the family in a smaller way. You can also do more creative, fun things as a result of that, because you're cooking for 4 people versus 400. So
what do you enjoy about cooking for a family? I mean, here's mom and dad. I mean, surely someone can cook. Now, it's very rare, but I have met a family through a church in Texas, and no one cooked. They always went out to eat. And I'm like, you might as well afford a private chef to come cook for you. When you think about cooking for a family, what is it about families that need a private chef? Is it because of timing?
I think the biggest reward for me is really giving them the gift of time and nurturing their family through food. A lot of pressure is put on women these days to work full time and come home and cook. And what usually slips from the schedule is the food piece. And they know they shouldn't be eating out. They know they shouldn't be getting fast food, whatever they're filling the void with. And there's a tremendous amount of guilt there. And of course, the health consequences. So for me, it's that first layer of time and nurturing, but really the long-term effects of feeling healthier and being healthier, building that investment in your health.
So when you think about cooking for this family, and I know, we talk about, guilt with women and coming home and feeling this way. I just remember oftentimes I would cook to help alleviate that. And that's where I help speak to men to encourage them to step up to the plate, to cook, because this way everybody is pitching in, helping, and that way it alleviates that guilt. Oftentimes I remember cooking on a weekend and just grilling all kinds of meat, not all the way, but just partially, so that you have time to heat it. As when you're cooking your sides and things, it makes it a lot easier. So as a private chef, I mean, here you are engaging with family. Do you just go to their home at the time that they're requesting? I mean, mealtime prep takes a long time to prep, especially if you're commercialized. It takes a while because you're feeding the masses. But here you are. Explain a little bit about a private chef, the time frame. What's involved in your timing?
Yeah. Well, first I would meet with the family either virtually or in person, find out what they're doing now, what their likes and dislikes are, create a menu, send that to them, and then they would approve it or change it. And then I would go grocery shopping and then show up at their house. 9 times out of 10, I'm preparing the meals when the family's not home. So I'll go in the morning, prepared. It takes me about an hour to get a week's worth of meals done and then leave. So it's in the fridge. All they need to do is warm it up. And that way they don't have me intruding on their space at the end of the day when they're tired, or vice versa. I want to be in the kitchen just getting everything done and out of there. So that's pretty much the schedule.
So I know with chefs and trying to find the fruits and the vegetables and meal preps and things like that, did they buy the groceries or did you go and buy the groceries?
Right. I can do it either way. Most clients prefer me to buy them because that way I get what I want, what I see as fresh and a good product. But some clients want to buy their own food too, and that's fine. I mean, either way is fine. I just provide them with the list and they go get it. So what would you recommend to families who do have that time to cook? What are some things, some suggestions that you would help them to go, where do you find healthy food? Because today, our food is so toxic here in America. I've got a couple that I'm counseling now that they had vouched to me that they went to another country and stayed there for 2 or 3 weeks and they lost weight because of the food is much more healthier. What is your advice to people now that are trying to find healthy food? Right. So let's first say, let's start where you are. What are you doing now? And then we take baby steps to clean it up. Because again, it gets back to the whole New Year's resolution mindset. If you take too big of a leap, you're never going to maintain that growth. So let's say you're getting all your groceries from, let's just say Walmart right now. Let's take that grocery list and make a small shift towards healthier choices. And then as we progress through maybe a few months, we'll continue to increase the health of what you're eating. Okay. Where I personally shop is I usually get all my stuff from Sprouts. I love Sprouts. I get some stuff from Trader Joe's. I also like Whole Foods. Just depends on what I'm buying. I don't eat any beef or pork. I eat very little chicken and some seafood, like mostly salmon or cold water fish. So really for me, it's the quality of the produce. That's where I want to go. So
it's interesting that you say that. And when you think about the food, just like, a couple of months ago, we had Thanksgiving, we had that turkey. I remember a long time ago where I was dating a person that did all organic. And she says, I want you to think about my food. I'm not going to tell you what I'm preparing, but I want you to taste it. So you're coming over for Thanksgiving. And I'm like, I have a choice. So I said, yes, of course, just teasing with her. And the turkey was organic. And it's wild to see a very, small turkey. And you go to large grocery stores and you got these big, huge turkeys. But the food that she prepared, I didn't know you can make mashed potatoes out of cauliflower, so to speak, and taste just like mashed potatoes. And so I find it very interesting that you can do that with organic food. So when you go into these stores, is it accurate marketing and is it accurate labeling? What's behind, you look at bananas, for example, you have organic bananas a little bit more pricier than you do just a regular banana that says not organic. What's the difference?
Well, I mean, first I want to dispel that myth of organic versus non-organic, right? Some things you want to buy organically, and I would refer people to the Environmental Working Group. They have the Dirty Dozen that they say, buy these organically, the rest doesn't matter. So bananas is a great example. So because bananas have such a thick skin on them, you're eating just the interior fruit. For me personally, I don't feel the price of buying organic is really justified because your fruit is not being touched by the differentiator there is usually the pesticides and the herbicides and the fertilizer that they're using, how they treat that plant during processing and growing, right?
Okay.
So if the product, the food has an exterior that you're not going to eat, then you're probably in good shape to not buy it organically. That's sort of like a really broad stroke definition. And then also just looking at the quality of the actual produce and seeing if it looks fresh, smells fresh, tastes fresh. For me, organic tastes better. It tastes cleaner. It tastes more like an apple is supposed to taste or an orange is supposed to taste. It doesn't taste chemically. So that's just me personally. And your taste buds do shift over time. As you pull the processed stuff out, as you get cleaner, your body starts to, shift and recognize those taste differences.
So let's take a different fruit like an apple, for example. Mm-hmm. You go overseas and an apple looks like an apple. Here, it looks like a piece of waxed product sitting out there waiting for you to buy, and it's still edible. And I know living in Japan, it was interesting because you can go and they have showcases outside their restaurant. And it's all made out of plastic, but it looks real. And you're able to say, this is what I want, and they will fix it fresh for you, and so forth. And so when you think about apples, right, our apples have coating, it's waxed and things like that. As a chef, if somebody wants an apple, what do you look for in an apple, or what is it that we can do to still have the nutritional value without the expense of the toxins of the wax and the pesticides that are on the apples?
Right. Great question. So I would always go for organic when it comes to apples. So that's the starting point. And then when you notice a conventional apple versus organic apple, it's the size, right? If you have an apple that's bigger than your fist, it's conventionally grown and it's been pumped full of all sorts of stuff to make it bigger. An organic apple is tiny. It's, about the size of your palm usually, and it tastes so much better. So I would look for organic first, size second, and then what taste profile the client's used to. Sweet or sour, crunchy or a little bit softer, tart, those kind of things are really important differentiators also.
So in Oklahoma, we have Porter, Oklahoma, and it's known for their peaches. Mm-hmm. Are those peaches healthy and organic compared to other peaches that are out there?
No. I mean, okay. They spray their fields. Unfortunately, peaches are one of the crops that are most prone to insects that like to attack them. So they have to spray the heck out of them. So, and because it's got such a thin skin, you're going to have penetration of that insecticide into the fruit. So, for me, peaches are definitely one that you want to buy organically. A lot of people even eat the skin of a peach. I know I do. So, I don't want any of that stuff on there because you can't really wash it off. It's soaked in through that skin.
Great point. I'm glad that we kind of discussed that, because oftentimes I think we look at our food and it's okay to eat because it's organically grown, so to speak, on a farm. And we think, okay, these things. So let's shift into the differences of, Tulsa and Broken Arrow has food markets, and I'm sure other cities have farmers markets, and they're able to go like on the first weekend or every weekend when the produce is available. Let's talk a little bit about Market Fresh. What is it that we can tell people to look for when it comes down to organic food at these markets?
Yeah. So the freshness of the produce, like, does it look wilted? Does it look crisp? Does it look fresh? Like, that's the best word I can use. Also, the advantage of a farmer's market is you usually have either the farmer or the farm worker working the stand. So you can ask questions and find out what their practices are. And also, because they are local, you can usually go to their farm, which is a great advantage too. You can see the process. So I like the farmers markets. I know I didn't mention that because it's a seasonal thing.
Right.
So I tend to forget about it. But also, really, when you're talking about meats, it's a really good thing to go to these farmers markets because there's a lot of really good quality local farmers that grow their own meat and they take pride in their practices. So I think for the average American, meat is a bulk of your diet. So getting a good quality beef, pork, chicken, or even seafood, which is not so prevalent here, but the other animals for sure.
So when you think about it's seasonal, and here we are in middle of winter, what do people do if you can't find the organic, fresh stuff from market? Now it's winter, and we're kind of forced to buy in supermarkets and so forth. Same concept.
Right. So, you have to eat seasonally, first of all. So if you're eating seasonally in the wintertime, you shift your vegetables to things like squash, acorn squash, butternut squash, those sort of things, potatoes, turnips, beets, all those cold weather vegetables. Spinach, the ideal would be to have a greenhouse or a hydroponic system where you're growing your own fresh greens, but that's quite a stretch for a lot of people. I get it. So the other thing for me is I always buy organic greens. Like I said, in the wintertime, I shift to more of a heavier winter, like produce, and pomegranates, that sort of thing that grow in the wintertime. They're more prevalent.
So let's shift a little bit from the fresh. Here we are, we have these farms, and not growing up, in college, I worked as an assistant manager for grocery stores. I was one when I was 18. I started working for an IGA store when I was going to college, and very unique aspect. And so I understand the concept. And there's a big, large grocery store in Oklahoma City that I was a part of, and understanding that I buy bulk things and bulk items. And so these foods like eggs sit in the warehouses for months. When it comes to the production and delivery, when you think about organic, oftentimes I think we forget about frozen. The frozen food, like, let's take the difference of spinach per se. We have the fresh organic spinach that could be available versus fresh spinach in a freezer. What would be the best?
Depends on what you're using it for, but I do use a lot of fresh produce for sure. If I'm making a soup or a quiche or something like that, I use organic. That's easy peasy, hands down, especially when it comes to greens, because it's been flash frozen, the nutrient quality is preserved. You don't have to worry about it wilting and going bad, particularly with like spinach or greens, they wilt and get slimy quickly. If you're looking at a fruit, again, if you're going to be using it in a smoothie or maybe a dessert, frozen is awesome. But if you need it for a salad, that's a different story. So I do rely a lot on organic frozen for sure.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll make an omelet, and because I don't go through spinach a lot because it's just me, and my dog doesn't really eat spinach, so it's just me. So I typically like to use frozen spinach to be able to add, or the frozen onions. And from what my understanding is that when fruit or vegetables are frozen, it comes really off of the picking right into the frozen. So the nutrients are more salvageable versus something that's been sitting for a while. Would that be accurate?
Absolutely. Yeah. That flash freezing process preserves those nutrients. And yeah, it's a good idea. I do the same thing. I break a little bit of frozen spinach off and throw it in an omelet or a quiche or something. So yeah.
So we're running out of time, and I hate to leave people on a cliffhanger, but it'll help bring us into part 2 of our series on healthy 2025. So Connie, here's the thing. I'm so tired of looking in the news, listeria, food recalls, and it's constant. I have not seen it as bad as it has been. What's behind this listeria issue?
Yeah, I mean, it's a guess on my part, but I'm just thinking it's the processing speed and the volume of the food going through our food processing systems, and they're not able to clean it or keep up with it. And then that even boils down to how it's grown, the runoff on the fields, the people picking the products. There's a lot of variables in where these bacteria can enter the system. And then it just gets multiplied once it starts getting processed. Because if you just have one little bit of that bacteria, put it in the processing system where they're cleaning and shredding and doing all that kind of stuff, it just spreads like wildfire, which is tragic. I mean, I think we're seeing the breakdown of the processing food system. And I hope that something's done. Otherwise, we're all going to have to go back to growing our own food.
I'm about to grow my own food. I have a cousin that lives in Texas, and we're talking about, the uniqueness of digging in ground and lining it with big boulder rocks to keep the heat during the winter. And so it's an in ground, and it's self-sustaining, which is a lot better. That way you can have fruits and vegetables year round. Yeah. And so I hate to go to that extent, but when you think about these listeria outbreaks, it just seems like there's a lack of accountability in the processing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't view it as an extreme measure to grow your own food. I think in my mind, it's taking accountability for our health and taking some of the pressure off of this unsustainable food system that we have. And it's really empowering us to, take care of ourselves and pull ourselves out of that process.
Well, Connie, we appreciate part 1 with you as talking about just our food. I believe it's important to understand food because a lot of people don't have that basic understanding of food. We just see it in the market. We buy it without thinking genetically modified. And so we're going to end it here. Until next time, take care and God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on Coach Soul. As we wrap up, we want to remind our listeners of a few key points. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content shared here is based on professional opinion but may not apply to everyone's situation. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your mental health care. If you're in a crisis, please seek immediate professional help or contact a crisis hotline. Listening to this podcast does not create a therapist-client relationship. For personal advice, please consult with your licensed mental health professional in your area. Remember, your mental health journey is unique. While we hope this information is helpful, it is crucial to work directly with the qualified personnel for your specific needs. Thank you again for tuning in to Coach Soul, and we'll see you next time.